Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Silver Tears Tarot, and welcome, of course, to my new people. I know we have some new people who have joined us recently. So today we're going to do the no communication reading. I mentioned it yesterday because it kept coming up, particularly as we got into the extended. And the extended was cool. We went in and we did a little bit of a deeper dive on what was happening and kind of what was causing your person to be so resistant after, even after the additional clarity that they've been starting to get. Well, it turns out it's because of that initial or that new clarity that they're starting to have. It's not necessarily new truth, but it's new clarity around that truth makes them pretty uncomfortable. So one of the things that kind of popped up was we wanted to look farther into just what is happening when we see absolutely no communication. Some of you are receiving some, but a lot of you are not. And so that's what we're going to look into in today's reading. It'll be a general reading as always. It's going to be for this collective, so it's not going to resonate with everybody, really shouldn't resonate with everybody. But as I say, if it resonates with you, then you may want to take a look at some of the other messages and maybe even think about subscribing because the readings that we're doing on this channel are all very much connected. So we'll jump right in and we'll get today's energetic backdrop and emotional backdrop. We have change, a lot of feelings about that change, I would say. So the winds of change are blowing, but it's not always a comfortable or welcome sort of thing. Definitely feeling a little bit of resistance to that change right now, which is not surprising. We've seen resistance energy coming from your person a lot, but there is something that's changing. So this is interesting. It's something that this is relevant to both you and your person. We have the Death card, and it's about change that has been, you've been very resistant to it. I feel like both of you have been very resistant to it, and in your own way, in your own lives. And yet that change is just here. And so I kind of feel like you are trying to make the best of it, but that is not necessarily, it's an awkward proposition, especially as your person feels it. Might be a little bit awkward for you too, but it's like you get that it's going to pass, temporary. So you've got the Two of Cups. This is a place where your energy is bonding. And so it makes it even stronger, like the feeling of the two of you, it feels even stronger, but even without that communication, your energies are coming a little bit closer. That's not necessarily a comfortable thing. You know, I say your energies are coming closer and you want to think, oh, that's positive and I should be happy about that. And there's not really anything inherently wrong with it, except it's not necessarily going to make things any easier for you. Their energy being a little bit closer is a challenge. And it's one of those things that we saw, if you've been with me for a while, back in April, we saw this, a lot of people starting to come back to, even people that, you know, you haven't heard from in years and we're thinking it just kind of wasn't going to happen here. And this was you learning concurrent lessons and not being able to come back into union. And all of a sudden this person would show up, but they would show up unhealed. And then after a brief interaction, some were more positive than others, they would bail again. And so it's an uncomfortable sort of feeling of change, kind of just in general, because they would leave, but their energy would stay with you. And so since about that April time frame, you guys have been working to accommodate, how do you manage your life when you're still not in contact, but their energy is still kind of right there. So for many of you, this is not a new problem, but it is one that just seems like it's kicked up here recently. And it has to do with the fact that they are the things that you guys are having change that you're both resistant to are not necessarily the same things, but they're evoking some of the same sort of triggers within you. And that change is not to be reckoned with. It is absolutely just coming through and happening. And right now it's creating a bit of a bond for you. But there's a feeling of something that has to be let go. And it's really difficult to do this. It doesn't feel like a good environment for them to want to let go. Doesn't feel like it's a good environment for you to be able to think about whatever it is that you need to let go. But there is it's like you both realize that what you're being impacted by is fear that is outdated, comes from the past, still triggers you, creates a bit of a problem, and then doesn't go anywhere. Like when you go in after it to figure out, well, what's driving this, you find something that you thought was resolved. You find something that you didn't think was would be causing a problem like that. And so it's confusing because you're like, well, how do I solve what feels like this much bigger problem? And the answer actually does, in a lot of cases, start with whatever that smaller piece is. You have the Judgment card talking about moving in the right direction, but it being very difficult to do so. So there's a lot of resistance in this Judgment card. Sometimes it's just because you know what the right direction is to go doesn't mean that you're able to do it. Doesn't mean that you're able to quit smoking just because you decided it was healthier not to smoke, that sort of thing. Those of you who have ever smoked before will understand that one, because it's a bit of a cognitive dissonance. You know one thing, but you're behaving in a different way, and it's got a little bit of a sense of that to it. So if I can unravel my cards, which, wow, they're not usually this bad. All right. And I don't even think I want that many. I don't ever know when I pick them up if I'm just going to want the top one or the top couple, or how many it's going to go down in there. So there's a little bit of a sense of this heartbreak. At least we're going to. There's a little bit of a sense of this heartbreak that's been associated, the heartbreak between the two of you, the pain between the two of you, that they are being able to associate with this thing that has happened for you in the past. So this is part of why they would be both attracted to you and to run away from you. So and that's what this Knight of Wands actually represents. It's that energy of coming and going. And we did yesterday, that's what stuck out in the YouTube reading that I then dug into much more deeply. It was that in and out behavior. Dug into that in the extended, and that's what brought out the question that we needed to look at today. Well, what happens when there's not any communication? Because that energy is still coming and going, and so you feel that energetic movement. But in a lot of cases, it's like, am I making this up? Am I crazy? You know, I mean, we did a reading very recently about and it could be a few days ago by now, but it was it was, no, you're not making this up. I put it right in the title because it's a question I get so often. And I realized after doing that reading, I'm like, it leaves no doubt, it's not a sense of making it up, but by the same token, you turn around and they're gone. It's like you can feel it and then they're gone. And it's because of that sense of pain or heartbreak that comes along with it. They're so afraid of experiencing that and of experiencing rejection. There's a huge fear of rejection. There is for both of you. There's rejection, abandonment, betrayal. I call it the big three. It's one of the areas where your need for healing tends to overlap in this situation. And it rings out and becomes such a trigger for them that's kind of what makes them remain in no communication, because it's safer that way. Now, they're supposed to be going on a quest, and recent readings would suggest that they're heading this direction. Supposed to be going on a quest to actually be able to find their happiness and understand what that means, because they've spent so much of their time pursuing something that it turns out does not actually make them happy. And in so doing, they've really weighed themselves down by having now this feeling of like carrying things that are not their responsibility, that should not be carried by them. There's a feeling that they need to, as they arrive at these different crossroads where they get to make decisions about things, different decision points, they say, all right, is this something that I carry or is it not? And if it's, I don't control this, then they may very well decide, I'm not going to carry this, or at least that's the way it's supposed to go. Right now, they're feeling a little overwhelmed with those decisions, and they're making decisions that are kind of like, here's what I've done in the past, and I am not necessarily thinking things through. So there's a need to think things through. We saw that King of Swords kind of pop out there. That last card that I turned over, I'm not sure if it needs to be in this reading or not. If it is, it'll pop back up. And I have confidence about that. It happened again yesterday. I was like, oh, I'm just going to put this down in there and it'll pop back up if it needs to. And it popped right back up. I love that feeling of being able to just trust that if that message needs to come out, that it will. But I did feel a bit of an honorable mention off of it. And it was about making a need to make a bit of a strategy, to use some logic around this quest and to help them determine whether they've actually moved or whether they just kind of feel like they're in a different position about something. So this turns out to be a lot of what's happening in their energy, which I think is useful. Sometimes it comes out and it's primarily about you, which is also helpful and good to know. But this feels like it's mostly about them. They don't feel like they have very good balance today or that things are really going their way. Like when they juggle something, they expect it to fall. It's got that kind of feeling to it. Not a great feeling for the day, but overall not that strong of a sensation either. So part of their no communication, though, has to do with that sense of overwhelm that they feel and that feeling of, I haven't headed in the right direction and everything. Every time I feel like I'm heading toward this thing, that it's their 10 of Cups thing. It's their 10 of Cups lesson, what they were learning with you. They feel like they got burned with it, though, emotionally. And it's partially because they can't have it, couldn't allow themselves to have it, what have you, because we've seen all of that coming up. They were intimidated by you, got their feelings hurt, had their ego bruised, had a third party situation going on, any or all of those things, because we've kind of seen all of that coming up at different points in the reading. And so it's easier for them to just say, I'm going to remain out of communication, except not as easy as what they would hope. So let's look a little bit more deeply into that, a little bit more into the energy around the no communication, see what wants to come out here. I feel like there's a lot of movement on their side that they just do the very best they can to keep it to themselves. You know, we saw that that King of Cups energy coming out yesterday, and it came out a couple of times. And what got me was it felt like it felt so much like I just have to come across a certain way. I can't allow my emotions to seem like they are out of control at any point. You know, there was that kind of feeling. Did you guys see that? I'm pretty sure we're not supposed to have it, but it's an Ace of Swords. It's about, oh, I have new truth. It's bad. Not necessarily that the truth itself is bad, just that it's very difficult for them to accommodate, which is what we saw in yesterday's reading. However, it still has generated some change in them. So this is the Devil in reverse. They feel a little bit freer from something that was kind of holding them in its grasp. And I want to say it's the overthinking, because whatever else they're doing that is helping them to stay out of, to kind of avoid the situation emotionally, they're still doing. They've got this new perspective that keeps showing up, though. The new perspective is one of the things that's actually keeping them quiet. So some of it, that's how it's going to be. Eight of Swords, yes, has a tendency to cause them to overthink. 10 of Pentacles, looking at what's happening in their life and in their current environment and trying to figure out, practically speaking, how that's going to play out. So we know that after some of the readings that we've seen lately, there's tumultuous change happening in some of these people's environments. They're not super happy at home or in their job or in some key element of their environment, and they're making a change with regard to that. So we've got the Hanged Man in reverse, or I'm sorry, the Hanged Man in the upright, talking about a new perspective that has been gained. It's not necessarily a comfortable new perspective. And when you become aware of the perspective not being especially comfortable, all of a sudden it kind of changes the way you see everything else in this area. With the Eight of Swords here, I see a lot of overthinking that really kind of crosses the line into not being productive, not being fruitful. This is the part where they worry about how it's going to be perceived, or how you're going to feel when they come to contact you. And that alone, that fear of rejection, is enough for them to feel like they can't. But there's also, with that new perspective, there's something, it's tied in with the energy. We saw this come up in a couple of readings ago. You've discovered something, or you're discovering something that does not necessarily, they don't know how to manage that, the way that's going to feel, the way that's going to look. And so they have a strong desire to keep themselves away from it, and they feel like they're able to resolve something by doing that. So I think what they're discovering, though, is that it's not really, not solving the problem, putting it under the rug is not going to solve the problem. They may not have the faculties to manage this right now based on what else is happening in their household, but they're not able to. This is a difficult thing to resolve. A difficult thing to resolve, especially because they're resistant to every element of resolving it. And this is something that isn't about you, but it very much is impacted by their relationship with you, and it impacts the relationship with you. So it feels like it's kind of wrapped all around it. You have the Ace of Pentacles, a door that they're not willing to open. And then you have a Seven of Swords in reverse. So this is a sense of the growth that they've had, and it's that increasing awareness that they have, that they're not handling this the way that they would like to handle it, which is a bit of a challenge because it sort of undermines their confidence somewhat. But feeling like they've got a door that they won't open, that's just plain a fear response. They're not opening it. They approach the door and then they don't walk through it. They choose not to open it because they aren't sure. They overthink what may be on the other side and what your response is going to be. That comes through a lot. There's something they don't want to let go of, but what I'm getting here is that they don't want to let go of control of the situation, and they want to be able to feel like they're as free from it as possible. Although that really it doesn't resolve anything. They're having to shut themselves down. They're having to shut themselves down emotionally and not make certain decisions. They're having to not walk in certain directions because of the emotions that they have here. We have the Two of Swords saying, here's the decisions they're not willing to make, the directions they're not willing to walk. Certain crossroads, when they get to them, they're forcing themselves to make a decision so that they don't have to walk past that door that they don't want to walk in. The Queen of Cups in reverse is kind of talking about, this is like a codependency response that they seem to be having, and it's surprising even them. Page of Pentacles is saying that this is something that they're learning, but they could be more open about, or open to the learning. But one of the reasons they're not is that they really weren't expecting this codependency response, and we're not expecting for this to go on for as long as it has. So a lot of you are saying the same thing. You're like, this has been years. I don't understand why I'm still having this response to this person. Like, why doesn't it just fall away? Why doesn't time make it better? And instead, it just, all these other things are changing. Other people have ghosted out on me and it doesn't bother me as much. But this person, it still bothers me that they left. What is this? What is this all about? You know, and it's not, it's something in you that still needs to be resolved. And we'll look a little bit into where you might focus here in a moment. But that's what this is. And your person is resolving things by sticking them down in, by overpowering them, essentially, by putting them in a metal box and sinking them to the bottom of the ocean. And so that is not going to work long term. But there's a strong sense of them kind of strangling the things that have a foothold, or that have a hold over them, rather. I dropped the Four of Swords here. There is healing that's needed, and I feel like to a certain degree, we already know that with your person there's been healing that's happening, and sometimes you're able to feel that, and it manifests as them wanting to move towards you, and so you become really aware of them, start having the dreams again, you know, that sort of thing. And it's very challenging because all of the good healing that they do also benefits you, and vice versa. But when they do it, it causes things to change for you in a way that it sort of wakes up, it stirs things up a little bit, and so you become aware of everything that's not fixed. they are incredibly aware of, with the Seven of Pentacles in reverse, how and where they haven't invested properly with you. This is important. This is important because what it ends up doing is kind of throwing them back into the situation. They have something that's not resolved. When they realize they haven't invested in the problem, all of a sudden, in their quiet moments, they realize how much of it is them and not you. And that's a tough realization for them. So it's a realization that takes them down a very difficult road. We have the Tower in reverse. They've got a lot of resistance to the thoughts that come up there. And with the Six of Wands in reverse, we have basically they're still fighting an uphill battle inside their own minds with regard to how to feel better about all of this. They don't have resolution, but they do have a strong desire to get there. They need a stronger connection. They need a stronger connection to their higher self and their higher power and their intuition in order to move past all that. But with the Queen of Wands here, we see that there's, I guess it's got kind of a happy ending sort of energy to it. We know that they need to move through this, but it's like it's a barrier that once they get through it, not that they're going to be done figuring things out. They still have to go on this quest. But if you guys recall, if you saw yesterday's reading, they're just now getting to a place where they even really can internalize the need for that quest. So they might have even been able to articulate, in a lot of cases they can't. They might have even been able to articulate, hey, I need to go on this quest. I need to get this figured out. They're actually getting like this visceral feel for here's what it's going to look like, you know? And I'm jumping the gun. They don't know what it's going to look like. They know that they need to go on it. They know that they are definitely not aligned with where they want to be, and that it's going to require a shift, but they don't know exactly what that shift looks like because they have to define it still. Let's look into that. Let's look into how they're feeling about that shift and how they're feeling overall, because we've seen an increased capacity for their emotions. So I'd be curious to see kind of what their emotions are right now, particularly in your direction. I know they've got a lot of irons in the fire, a lot going on right now, but we'll look at in the extended what's happening with your emotions, but also kind of what is the shift that they're looking at. So we'll look at that. First, let's look at you and get a feel for what you should be focusing on with all this, because with this collective, you guys being as focused on problem solving and moving forward as you are, I don't want to let a single reading go by without devoting some time to that. Especially because we know from yesterday's energy, you guys are solidly ready. Yes, you are solidly ready to move forward in something meaningful. So we have a new beginning, a passionate new beginning that shows up for you here. That is, I feel like I don't have to tell you to put your focus on energy like that. So before I drop these cards kind of all over, we have the Sun. You have been actively moving into happiness for some time now. There's a sense here of you even, I guess, here, we're going to do all those. There's a sense of you moving steadily into happiness, and that steadiness is, that's what's going to make it stick. So this is the Knight of Pentacles, which is slow and steady energy. It's frustrating sometimes because of how slow it is, but it is very pleasing because of how steady it is. And that is your energy moving forward right now. So it may feel like it's plodding very slowly, but it is also moving very steadily and surely. You've got some things you're not quite ready for right now. So as this amazement comes up here, this is like almost a hobby of the future, something for you to dabble in and keep your mind on, but not necessarily to jump in with both feet. It is something that moves you toward happiness, but it feels like an indirect path. So if you get drawn toward anything right now and you realize like, I just don't have time for this, whatever it is, maybe keep it on the back burner for a little while, because it may be something that indirectly opens a whole other path for you. You have a very well-rounded way about the way you're looking at your issues right now. And that's it's an enlightened way of looking at things, but it's going to help you out a great deal as well. With the Sire of Wands, this is like the King of Wands in reverse. You got to guard against trying to control your situation. There's something right around the corner for you that you haven't yet seen. This is the Hanged Dragon in reverse, and so it's the equivalent of the Hanged Man. They've got one upright over here because they do have a new perspective, but you get a series of these aha moments and these new perspectives. You've got one that's coming for you that you aren't quite there yet. Right now, I would say just kind of hang in there because it's definitely kind of wanting to shine on you. And I get the sense that it's almost like watch the time of the full moon, because I feel like that is when the mysteries may start to come out for you. And so I guess the full moon is going to be coming up in, it's less than 2 weeks now because we just recently had the new moon, and I think it's right there toward the end of September, so maybe the 27th, 28th, right in that time frame. So be watching those for a particularly enlightening moment, at least as far as understanding some things. But you've got to be in the right place to be able to kind of take that advice or to exercise that advice. You've got to be feeling confident, got to be feeling like you are, I don't know, ready to move forward. Got to be feeling like you are ready to take on the next thing and feeling strong, not letting old things drag you down. There, you're going to find you're triggered by some things that you thought you were past, and it turns out that you're not, and you have like a I'm just going to leave sort of response to it. And it surprises even you, the significance and the strength of the response. So take that, grab it by the tail. You guys are excellent at this point. Grab it by the tail, take it and allow it to guide you towards something that's going to redefine or define the problem better for you. Look for the places where you don't feel confident. You're going to have places, particularly in this energy, where you don't feel super confident, and you need to be able to let that help define where your next area of work is. Every single bit of progress you make helps your person, helps you, and helps you guys get closer to a place where you could actually, if you choose to be in union after these lessons, these are lessons that you would already want to have learned. So absolutely every inch that you can move forward on this path, you're going to want to do that. And I think we'll keep looking at that when we get into the extended here. We'll look at you a little bit. Definitely have to look at what's happening with your person, the shift that they're going through, the situation and how they're feeling about it. You, though, also have to go through kind of this same thing with understanding what it is that you want and understanding your best path to get to it. Because it may not be a given. It may be something that you used to have a path lined out to this, but it's changed a little bit. So absolutely, it looks like there's something that's like a tree fallen in your path that seemed like it was a pretty well-worn path and you had a plan. Something's going to change. I think you're going to make short work of this. I don't think it's going to create a problem for you, but I also think that it's something that you need to be aware of. So be watching. You're going to be well positioned to solve this problem. We'll look a little bit more into what it looks like you're going to need to solve that. When we get into the extended, along with how your person is feeling and a little bit more about the shift that they are undergoing. So if you want to go into the extendeds are always a little bit more like kind of private reading. I mean, they're obviously not, because they're out there for everybody to click on, but far fewer people click on them. So they feel very intimate. They feel a little bit more like that, but heaven only knows what'll come out there. It's always interesting to see how much it'll bring in what we know, but then it'll give it another element. So if you're interested, the link is down below in the description under this video. I'll see you there. Otherwise, I will see you in tomorrow's reading.